So, a couple things from Twitter that were just fantastic this week. I appreciated the Mossad continuing to be awesome. They said, deploy the giant magnet. Because of all the medals those guys are wearing. I thought it was kind of funny. The Mossad are pretty great, by the way. If you don't follow them on Twitter, you really should. I don't know that it's really the Mossad, but man, I hope it is. All right. I hope it is. All right, so the next one is actually a two-part Twitter story. Okay? So the first one is breaking. I don't know if you guys saw this. Baltimore High School being evacuated for possible hazmat situation. This is big. This is a big thing. Okay? So basically they evacuated an entire Baltimore High School due to a hazmat situation. Update. A spokesman for Baltimore City Fire Department has confirmed the source of the odor was a pumpkin spice air freshener.
Best story of the year.
I thought it was the best story of the year. This is the best story of the year. And the best part is, it took them 45 minutes, apparently, to figure out that it was a pumpkin spice air freshener. It's a real story, by the way. This is not a parody account. This is really the ABC News affiliate in Baltimore. So, America.
Didn't I hear that 2 people went to the hospital because of nausea?
Because
From this?
yes, oh no, it was like that's what caused them. According to the story I read, that's what caused them to think it was something poisonous, just because people were getting sick. I gotta be honest, I really don't have a problem with you getting sick with pumpkin spice air freshener. Because they need to go away. But anyway, right now that is my #1 Twitter story of the year. Hands down, not even close. Because when I first saw it, I thought somebody's being funny, right? It's a parody account. No, it's a real thing. They evacuated the school because of a pumpkin spice air freshener. Anyway, good times. All right, so let's get to Jesus. All right, so last week we finished with Christ as the culmination of the law so that there may be righteousness for everyone who believes. And we talked about how that there's really no way to see the whole picture without Christ. That we can't see the gospel, we can't understand the gospel, we can't really understand life without Jesus as the centerpiece of what's happening and giving us a perspective. And remember we talked about Sam. Everybody remember Sam?
Yes.
The crazy guy walking in the snow? Right? But then you back it out and you realize that Sam makes awesome pictures that, because he sees it differently. So when we're looking at it like this, maybe we don't see what's going on, but when we see everything in light of what Jesus did, we get a bigger picture and we can work our way through some of the difficulty, the more difficult things that come at us in life. And it's important that we can step back and say, in light of what Jesus did, in light of who Jesus is, it's a different look. And I think sometimes we rush to answer questions like that, right? Somebody comes at you with this little question, they go da 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 da, and then it turns out, you're missing sort of the bigger context, which is flat out awesome. So this week we're going to move ahead. Paul basically finishes the rest of this part. So he says that Jesus is the culmination, right? And so Paul works through the idea of faith versus works in really very plain detail as he moves through it. He says, Moses writes this about righteousness. So after Jesus is the culmination of everything, Moses writes this about the righteousness that is by the law. The person who does these things will live by them. Okay, so in this moment of context, right, we see this idea of obedience. And he says those who basically, do this, those who basically state these as true, live by them. And so, where's the evidence of obedience? That's one of the great questions that I like to ask young people when I talk to them in Bible class, or, where is the evidence of what you say you believe? Because I think we all have beliefs that range far beyond what we would consider sort of faith-centered beliefs. We all have things we say we believe. But where is the obedience? Where is the conviction? Where is the actual action that backs what we say we believe? And I know we live in a society that will question you for backing what you believe if it's not mainstream, or if it's not popular, or if it's not, fair, but I have things that I believe that I'm willing to go die on, right? Little hills of things I believe. But I also have things I believe that I recognize are not hills worth dying on, right? Like, what is a sport or what's a pageant, right?
Your son was in a pageant.
And yes, my son was in a pageant on Thursday, played a sport on Friday. I no problem. He's diverse in his skill set. But to me, it's I've got certain things that I believe, certain things that I would tell you I know to be true. But where is the obedience to it? One of the quickest ways to kind of bug me is if you say you believe something but you can't defend it at all. I mean, at that point, conversation's over with what you say you believe. At that point, I just assume you're trying to troll me, right? Or trying to get under my skin. But we ask ourselves, where's the evidence? So we look at the verse again. It says, the person who does these things will live by them. So the person who basically says that, listen, I obey the law, I know the law, then I'm going to live by those rules. Well, the context of Moses saying this, which Paul's audience should have known, is that he's talking about sort of the life in the promised land. And he's actually just ending a whole thing on sexual immorality and the punishment for it. That's the context of that verse. And so he's basically saying, listen, you can sit here all day long and tell me that you believe something, but it doesn't matter. Those who obey these things, those who do these things, will ultimately find life by these things. So righteousness is totally attainable through the law. Paul's not arguing with that. See, he's accepting that there's really two paths you can walk. You can embrace law, right? Because Jesus is the culmination of everything, which means he's the culmination of the law. So Paul's saying you can continue to walk in the law because Jesus is just the culmination of it. And if you want to, you can go live by these things. You can try it. Because it's very plain and simple what he says, right? That you, if you're going to say it, you go do it. If you're going to do it, then you go live by it. Which means if you choose to live by being righteous by works, go ahead. It's out there. It's possible. Hey, probably improbable. But he's saying, listen, it's out there for you if you want to do that. If you want to choose that, go ahead. So Paul's basically stating this argument. He's going, or let me show you the better way. Let me show you the way that's just as real, but is a lot less improbable. And so he continues and he says, but the righteousness that is by faith, so now he's comparing. So he starts with, hey, you can go live by the law if you want. Jesus is the culmination of faith in the law. So you can choose the path of law. Or the righteousness that is by faith says, do not say in your heart who will ascend into heaven, that is to bring Christ down, or who will descend into the deep, that is to bring Christ from the dead. So here he's talking about this person of Jesus, right? That there was a lot of people in this Jewish culture who, at the time, who were telling other people, you had to see it, you had to know him, you have to go see him, you have to ascend into heaven, right? Or you have to go deep down into the pit of hell. But either way, you have to have this personal, physical encounter, like we did. You have to know him. And one of the things that we did in Bible class last week, actually I was very entertaining, was there's this video that they have where it's all these people talking about their physical manifestation of Jesus. Right? How Jesus showed up to talk to them in this sort of physical manifestation, and there's all these sort of different testimonies of all these people. And this guy's like, right? This theologian, this is the centerpiece. But they're just talking about how it was so special that he gave me this time. And it's like, but why would he do that but then mandate faith from everybody else? So this is where Paul's saying, listen, it's not about this ascension thing, going into heaven, going into hell. At this point, they've been sort of stressing this need to see him. One must be where Christ is to be righteous. Well, that's Paul saying, no, that's not true. Paul says, you don't need faith then. Right? You're missing the point. You don't understand. And then they basically had this attitude of no matter where, either heaven or hell, you had to be with Jesus. You had to have this personal experience, this physical sort of experience, manifestation of Jesus. And Paul said, listen, no, hold on. First of all, if you want to choose works, go ahead. If you want to choose the way of righteousness by doing everything perfect, go ahead. He's not arguing. He says it's there, go for it. You want to pick that. Or you can look at faith. But then he starts with this discussion about faith by saying it's not about this idea is not about faith. This idea has nothing to do with faith. And he's like, listen, it is not about being physically where Jesus is. You don't have to run to him. And then he goes on to explain why. He says, but what does it say? The word is near you already. Okay? The word is near you. It is in your mouth, it's in your heart. That is the message concerning faith that we proclaim. All right? So the word is already near you. He's saying that the words of Christ, the person of Jesus, the interaction of Jesus with you in life, it's already there. That's what allows you to have faith, is that wherever you are, that's where he is. He's right there. You have the truth of his message, which is that you can live by faith. You can find righteousness by faith. Remember, Paul is not under the assumption here that he's writing the New Testament. Like, that's one of the biggest things of context that people need to understand. Is Paul, I can't fathom that he was so audacious as to believe that they're going to keep all of these letters he's writing to the corners of the earth, and then they're going to bring them back and they're going to make this really awesome anthology out of his just sick writings, right? He's not thinking that. He's writing a letter trying to help the church in Rome out. So what's this word that he's talking about? What's this, when he talks about the Bible, when he talks about the scriptures, what's he talking about? Who's talking about what they already had?
OT.
Right. He's talking Hebrew scriptures. Sorry, Professor used to yell at me when I was at the Old Testament. It's not old. Yeah, it's the first part of a covenant. My book says Old Testament. I don't mean to be a jerk, but just read. But the idea is that he's using testimony and the Hebrew scriptures, right? So he says, listen, the word's already near you. So when he says it's the culmination, Jesus is the culmination of the law, he's not saying the New Testament is the culmination of the Old Testament in the way that you read it. He's saying the person of Jesus finishes the product that you already have. So when you read that, it's this story of God and his grace. Like I said, one of the hardest things to get people to understand is that the story of the Bible is about God and his grace and God's choice to love. It's not about how lovable we are. It's not about how much we needed or deserve grace. He made a decision. And so Paul says, listen, the word of Christ is right there. It's right there. The person of Christ is close, and ultimately, nothing more is required of you than to have faith in the word. To have faith in what's said, you have to trust the word. You have to have faith that what it says is true. One of the hardest realities of faith is trust. Because in the end, you are committing yourself eternally to trusting its accuracy. Having faith in God is not what we often think it is, right? I think a lot of times we have this idea that if you believe in a higher power, you believe in a God. You believe in God. Well, that's not true, right? Einstein's the greatest story of that, right? Christianity's been trying to claim Einstein forever. No, Einstein says, I saw this meme. No, that's not what Einstein said. Einstein's struggle was, he struggled to understand a universe that had order if built randomly. Einstein's greatest struggle was something created the law of the universe, right? If you ever read any books on Einstein, there you should, because you get smarter just by opening them. It's amazing. But the idea is that there's this massive universal order, and he basically went to his grave going crazy over his inability to figure it out. Why was there order? There should not be order. But that's not belief in God, right? That's belief in order, or belief in something you don't understand. And we see it a lot. People say, oh yeah, I believe in God, I believe in God, I believe in God. People, what are you actually believing in? The existence of, or the truth of the Word? Because the truth of the Word says that you have to have faith in who he is so that you can ultimately, which we'll get to in a second, but you have to declare your faith in him so that you can ultimately be saved, right? That's what it is faith and obedience. It's not just this idea that yes, he exists, or no, he doesn't. It's bigger picture than that. And one of the things that's interesting is in your mouth and in your heart creates no distinction between vocal confession and inward confession. It does not distinguish this idea that somehow one is more important than the other. Okay, which I'll explain in just a second. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, okay, that's where we get that from. And believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Okay, those are two very strong distinctions in terms of what you have to do. So believing in God sounds great, but that's not what that says. Right? It says you have to believe that God raised him from the dead, and you have to believe in Jesus. Right? Not just some enigmatic God. For it is with your heart that you believe, and you're justified, right? And it is with your mouth that you profess your faith, and you're saved. Okay? Now, this might sound like two totally different things happening here, but it's not. Okay, so let me explain. So, with your heart, you are justified. The inward side, right? So with your heart, he says you are justified. The heart shows the true status of what you believe to God. You can tell me all day long your heart says something and I can't prove it. One of the things, I'll say this because Marcus isn't here this morning. One of the things that drives me nuts about his football team is that there are a couple of kids that have tons of talent and they have zero heart. And these parents keep getting mad at coaches, and I'm like, that's not what it is. You can't coach heart. Either a kid's got it or he doesn't. Now, I'm not saying he can't grow into it later on, but either he's got it right now or he doesn't. Heart is this truth of what exists inside of it. When we say an athlete has heart, it means it's not just about whether they overcome injuries. It's about whether they ever quit. How much fight there is in the dog, right? And it's important that we understand that the heart shows to God the truth of what's inside of us, right? Your heart provides God with the evidence. Okay? So evidence matters. I like evidence. Evidence of anything matters, right? If you're looking for evidence of whether something's true or not, it's always nice to find something. In this case, our heart provides to God the evidence. Now, I know that might seem backwards to you, based on how it's said, but God sees the heart, right? That's the only evidence he cares. Why? Because in the end, there will be plenty of people who call me Lord, Lord, and don't get into heaven. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Nowhere, it does not say, in the end, there will be plenty of people who loved me dearly with their whole heart, and I had to boot them. So there's a distinction drawn there. Okay? Okay, so your mouth professes and saves. Okay, so now your heart brings this forth, the profession of your faith. Your mouth shows your public truth, and your mouth brings salvation. Now, your mouth also provides the evidence of your heart to you. Why do I mean to you? Because we all know we say the truth to ourselves when nobody else is around. Right? Our mouth can communicate a lot of different things. Right? When no one else is standing there. And we say it to ourselves all the time. Well, where does that come from? Why are there two of us? There's a lot of things we'd say in church, right? We come in church and we go, how top of the morning to you. Oh yeah, blessings to you too, Brother Johnson. Blessings. As soon as we get in the car, we're like, heck, stupid. And it comes out of our mouth. Well, where's that coming from? It's coming from the truth that's our heart. When someone blurts out something awful, now I'm not just talking about a random conversation where you say something incorrectly. We've all done that. But when the heat gets turned up and you turn on somebody and the most awful vitriol garbage comes out of your mouth, where do you think that came from? Breath mint you just had? No. Came from where?
Your heart.
Right. So your mouth provides evidence to you. Your mouth can provide false evidence to somebody else. So our heart provides God with the true evidence because he sees our heart. That's why God doesn't spend a lot of time paying attention to what we say. Because what we say isn't necessarily true. But it is true when we talk to ourselves. It is true when we're honest with ourselves. It is true when we hear the things we say. It is true when this kind of stuff comes out, where, oh yeah, one day Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and the next day, I hate you. You're a horrible person. And then whatever that one after the right means. The idea is, what do we say when nobody else is listening? What do we say when we're frustrated? What do we say when we're being truly honest? Because I don't know about you, but my most honest moments are what really comes out of my heart is when nobody else is there to listen to it. Right? Because there's not too many places I can go in my life and blurt out what I really think sometimes. Right? I coach football for a Christian school and a Christian organization. I work in a church and I teach at a Christian school. I don't have a lot of outlets. You know? I don't have that back corner of the warehouse where I can just go throw things. Right? Which is one of the reasons I coach. And you can throw things. Just drill them with football every now and then. But no, the idea is that's what comes out, right? Is your mouth only professes the truth when you're alone. Unless you're just an awful person and you don't stop professing it all day long. But that's the distinction between the two. That's why you can profess to Jesus with your mouth all day long, but it doesn't mean you're going to gain interest in heaven. That's why the heart is what justifies. The heart is what justifies. That's what lets God know you're on the right track. You believe that I rose Christ from the dead. You believe in what he came to do. You believe in the word. Now, like I said, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have times where our mouth says something, I should work on that, kind of a thing. I mean, that's usually what I try to do, but, doesn't mean our mouth isn't going to let stuff out. But at the same time, it should be bridled. And you should be aware of the fact that we say wrong things. We should know the minute something leaves our mouth, oh gosh, you know what? Where did that come from? Not, that's a perfectly acceptable response to the situation. But that's kind of who we are. That's why there's no distinction between the two in terms of, what's more important than the other. The heart justifies because it tells God the truth. The mouth justifies what's in the heart to us. Because if your mouth constantly is letting stuff fly, that is not what Christ stood for, is not the truth of the gospel. If your mouth is constantly, pouring out things that are awful and critical, and you got to step back and go, my heart is not in the right place whatsoever. Don't just change what you say. I get people are from rough patches, right? And this is not a lesson on profanity. Okay? People come from different worlds. I get it. But at the same time, why is so much anger coming out of it? Why is so much frustration coming out of you? I mean, one of the most interesting things, to me anyway, about the last couple of sort of national shootings, whether it was in Vegas or Scalise or whatever, is the age of the shooter, right? In both cases, 60 plus years old. Well, there's somebody who didn't ever dealt with their issue, right? There's somebody who, the steam kettle of our nation and the pace of our life and the pressure and the inundation of news and horrible things just pressed and finally got to be too much. And they went crazy. And it's like, that's what terrifies me, is how many more people are sitting around out there, who just, their heart has become so sick and so diseased that at some point it lashes out. And that's what, that's why Paul is saying it's the condition of your heart that God cares about? Do you see the things of God, or do you spend the whole time allowing your heart to become more and more ill? Yeah, your mouth might still be saying the right things, but at some point that disease is going to come out. At some point that anger is going to erupt. At some point it's like a volcano. You know, it just, that's where the pour comes from. Oh, and you can sit there and look all happy and go lucky and communicate the nicest things and say all the nicest things. But like I said, that's not evidence of your heart whatsoever. Until you're alone. Then the evidence of your heart comes out. Then the truth of who you are comes out. And that's why Paul is talking about profession being salvation and the heart being justification. And it's, to me, like that's what scares me the most about all these situations. And it's, you know, like I said, I'm around kids all day long. I'm around families all day long. And, you know, I mean, it's amazing how much you're on heightened alert if you're in those worlds. You know, and not to go stereotypical, we had a guy in a white van show up the other day and just parked at the end of our parking lot by the back corner. And that's where the freshman float was, but it was on the other side of the fence. And he started talking to the girls, the freshman girls. And I was the teacher on duty, you know, and I was really paying attention. And, you know, I was sitting there talking to the baseball coach about baseball. And one of the girls walks over and they go, "Hey, Mr. Lehman, do you have a pencil?" And I said, "No, I make it a habit not to carry pencils because you all steal them." And she goes, "Oh, okay." She goes, "Well, this guy over here says he's got a pen." I was all, "Okay." She said, "The guy in the van?" I was all, "Okay, first tip, dude in van, stay away." Right? If you don't know him, right? That was just a good tip. Yeah, so I kind of walk over and I look at him, I go, "How you doing?" He goes, "Hey, did you hear Tom Petty died?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, sad day." Totally. Right? Well, he ended up driving off a couple minutes later. The guy just stood there. And then he finally drove off. He came back a couple days later, sat there again. And this time, one of our elder statesmen at the school, Lynn Olson, who's a tiger, she comes up and she goes, "How you guys doing?" I go, "You know who the dude in the white van is?" She's like, "What white van?" I go, "The one white van." She goes, "No, but I'm gonna find out." Right? And I'm like, "Should we go with her?" You know, there's like 8 dudes there. And you know, she started marching. Well, anyway, he drove off and came back again the next day. And finally, you know, one of our school people went out there and said, "Hey, who are you?" Well, it turns out he's a person who lives next to the school, like has yelled at me on numerous occasions. He yells at me like Will Self on. Home improvement, right? Because he just, you know, so I didn't recognize him. Apparently I should have struck up a conversation about Tom Petty. But he's cussed us out, he screamed at our kids, because baseball's landing in his backyard. Well, there's something not right there now. And so, you know, I mean, we're all kind of on heightened alert now, right? Because that's not a safe situation. And, you know, and we're in this era now, and he's not a young man, right? This is not a young man. But you sit there and you think to yourself, it's like, what the condition of the heart with everything that's going on and just everything that's happening, we have to protect our hearts, right? We have to protect the truth because that's what brings us justification. But we let so much stuff into our heart. You know, we become sickened by this or that, you know, this news or that news or this political thing or that political thing or, you know, this thing or that thing. And we sort of become, we're becoming angry and more angry. And, you know, that's why Paul's saying, listen, what is your mouth confessing to you when nobody else is around? How do you really feel about me? Because the truth comes out when nobody else is around. How do you really feel about this group or that group? How do you really feel about this person or that person? That's the condition of our profession, our truth. Anyone who believes in him will never be put to shame, for there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. The same Lord is Lord of all, which is all means even the people you're mad at, right? Mm-hmm. And richly blesses all who call on him, even the people you utterly disagree with. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. That is a no uncertain terms passage. Everyone calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Doesn't matter of your socioeconomic status, your race, your country of origin, your current country of residence, your political affiliation, your whatever. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's Paul's path through faith. You just have to trust in what Jesus did, who Jesus was, in the Word of God, in the name of God, and guess what? That faith will basically present itself in a profession of truth. Because if you really believe that, then you can't not do something about it. There's a really good video that you should watch on YouTube. That Penn Teller Gets a Bible. Penn and Teller Get a Bible. I don't know if you guys will watch that. But basically what happens is, they're atheists. And they're professed, anti-religion, anti-religious type folks. They're magicians and very funny. But he kind of does this thing where a guy gives him a Bible at an event, and he's talking about, I won't get into the whole thing, it's really long, but the point he makes at the center is, if you say you believe it, then you have to do something. Because he said it's like standing on a sidewalk in a busy street and seeing a truck coming and someone standing there not paying attention. You have to reach out to the street and pull that person off the street. You have to. He said the problem is that most people don't have that kind of conviction. Because that's what Christianity is. It's looking at someone standing on the street and what am I going to do about it? And a lot of us go, well, they should be allowed to make their own choices. I don't want to pressure them. Hey, so you're standing in the street. Have you given any thought to what might happen if a truck comes? Right? But that's how we do it, isn't it? Right? EE, evangelism explosion. Right? If you die today, do you know where you'll go? Right? That's a good time to have that talk while the truck's coming. Right? What's your plan? Have you thought about it? I'll come back. Right? It doesn't, but that's his whole point is that everyone who calls on the Lord will be saved. That's how we have to view it. And it has to be the profession of the truth of what we know. And Paul strikes a really good tone, right? To me anyway, in this passage. He breaks it down. You can have righteousness if you live by every tenet of the law. So you got it. No problem at all. Okay? If you want to live by works, go for it. Okay, good luck. But you can go for it. That's Paul says by all means. Right? Which is one of the reasons that I love it. Or you can have faith, trust, and believe in God, and find salvation. But if you find it, then you have to know you have to do something about it. Because it's going to change the condition of your heart, which means it's going to change the conversation of your mouth. It's going to change the way that you profess. If the truth is, since you came to Christ, if what you profess in private hasn't changed, but what you profess in public has changed, then your heart hasn't changed. And that's a real challenge to all of us, I think. Because a lot of us get really good at talking Christian before we get good at truly being Christian. Right? We get good at talking Christian first. Okay? Going to church, lay off on the crass jokes, the sexism, the anger, the profanity, right? Probably should back off just a shade on the sex jokes that I heard at work, right? Because I'm in church and someone might get offended. So we get better at talking church before we get better at actually speaking the truth of our hearts. And it doesn't mean that suddenly we become boring. It just means that needs to be what's coming out and professing in private. So let's receive our offering as we close up. And get out and enjoy an absolutely astoundingly beautiful day. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you so much for this morning, God. We pray your blessing over the offering. We pray your blessing over this beautiful fall season that we're entering into. Pray for a great week of missions work for our church and their communities and their jobs and their homes. That we can, spot somebody who's struggling and focus on the words of our heart and kind of what's coming out of our heart and what's basically being evidenced through the things that we say. Pray for a challenging week in your name. Amen.